You can still talk though.
We can?
Yeah.
Everyone gets like silent. It is a virtual
live
social
streaming
club.
somewhere, aren't we? We're live streaming somewhere, aren't we?
Are we live?
Yes, we've been, I think.
Just always make triple sure. Yeah, we're good to go.
Okay.
All right. Ready?
Yeah.
Welcome, everybody. This is episode 7 of Science Squawk. My name is Abel Gutierrez, and with us today, as always, is author extraordinaire Steve Chapple. And joining us for this show, our lurker and executive producer, Amanda Canaglia. Always a pleasure to have her on to add comedic relief to our show. Thank you all those that have been watching us religiously since the start. I think we're approaching the low thousands now on Facebook. So thank you all for contributing and making the show possible for us. It's been fun. So yeah, with us today, we have got some very special guests. Serial company founders and organization starters. We have Rolf and Judy Muller, who are infamous for starting companies like BioFluidica, Biomatrica, and with us today to talk to us more about their new COVID diagnostic service, a mobile service here called Mobile Express Clinics. We have them here to tell us a little bit more about how that's going to help us through this time of the pandemic. And Steve, I understand that you know our guests personally.
Yes, in terms of liquidity, all the way from La Jolla Country Day and having them talk to the students to my doing a bit of consulting work for BioFluidica, which Rolf or Judy can talk about, which is essentially a really successful lab on a chip for grabbing a very, very tiny number of circulating cancer cells. And go ahead, Rolf.
Yeah. I'm gonna dip out and let you guys talk science, but I just want to make sure that you guys got on safely, and we can't wait to have you back at Bella Vista. So I'll pop back in at the end if I've got any zingers questions for you guys. Okay?
Okay, thanks a lot, Amanda. That's great. Thanks for having us on the show. And Steve, thanks for making this connection. So this is kind of the first time that we are on this Zoom live stream. So it's pretty interesting. You know, we have a lot of experience running companies and building them, but this is the first that we are Zooming streamed. So I don't really know how to do this correctly, but just start talking and you tell me, Abel, you tell me when I'm going too far or too deep or
we'll interrupt you.
Enough.
Oh, yeah.
So you do that. Yeah.
Give us give us an overview of what the new testing service is and why it's important. Mobile Express.
Okay, so just a little background. So Judy and I, we are married since 32 years, have 4 children and 4 companies later, and we are still able to work together every day, and it's really fun. Okay, so a little background, I start perhaps just educational background. I'm a molecular virologist by training, got my doctorate at the Pasteur Institute working on extremely dangerous hemorrhagic fever viruses in BSL-3 facilities. So very, very used to work in high security laboratories and in virology. So Judy, you wanna continue and give your educational everything?
Yeah, okay. Well, Rolf and I met in grad school for our masters and both went to Paris to get our doctorates. I got my doctorate at the Pasteur Institute in microbial biochemistry and then started my industrial career here in San Diego in a biotech company. And here we are a few years later. With 4 children and multiple companies under our belt and launching something today that or in the last couple of weeks that we hope is going to help our own community, not only in San Diego, Southern California and beyond, but really helping with getting people back to work safely with Mobile Express Clinics.
Okay, just as a starter, so the whole thing when it became clear something is happening in China and the information came over here and we have a lot of contacts in China, so we know pretty early what is happening and you know, as a virologist, we are waiting for a pandemic like that, that it's likely. We think about it for, forever. We thought about it, what happens if HIV becomes airborne, or what is if SARS and Ebola comes over, Rift Valley fever virus moves from Egypt over to the Mediterranean, to Europe. So there's always that fear that something like that could happen. So when we saw it, the high mortality rate in China, the first thing when the virus was sequenced, and I get a little back, so Judy and I, we are running a cancer diagnostic company, and we wanted to continue working. So we knew if that comes over here and it's as dangerous as what we saw in Wuhan, at that point, we have to be prepared. So Judy, you want to talk a little bit about how we made our test in-house and kept our employees safe?
Sure. So initially at BioFluidica, we were concerned on many levels. One, we wanted to keep working, and our staff wanted to keep working, but we wanted to be safe. So we implemented all the normal things that you would do during an outbreak such as this, as cleaning every day, social distancing, but also before tests were really that available, we bought primers for the sequence for COVID-19. And we had the equipment in-house and the know-how, and we actually started to test on ourselves with our own test.
Wow.
And it was a way that we could keep working before the tests were available commercially in the United States. So we use that to keep ourselves and our circle of people that we all agreed to stay with a very small circle. Even when we were outside of work, that kept us all safe and able to continue to work. So that was sort of the beginning of a new reality for us to keep BioFluidica going. And out of that, we realized that there were many others like us who either were trying to keep working right at the beginning of the pandemic in the US, as well as those who wanted to get back to work safely. So out of that little kind of homegrown experiment that we have continued to do to keep ourselves safe, came the idea of mobile express clinics.
So what's actually the interesting part here was people got really scared when that happened, because you didn't know, will your coworker infect you? How does it ramp? Nobody really knew what will come towards us, but we know it will come also to San Diego. And when it happened then really in New York, and actually when it happened in Italy, that was the first real, indicator of what comes to us. And there were a couple of really interesting things that happened. So one, there was a little village west of Florence. It's called Vaux, and they screened 3,500 people in this village. It was almost a self-contained study of testing a whole community. And when they did that, they found, I think in the beginning it was 3% of people who were infected. A couple of weeks later, they did it again. They had 0.5% infected people, and that was about the only safe place in Italy a little later. So having a community approach towards a pandemic is actually something extremely smart. We saw our little cancer diagnostic company like a community. We saw that we come together and we keep each other safe. So we tested each other all the time. And if someone went on a travel and came back, or their kids felt like, oh, I have a little cold, we just tested everyone. And these were not FDA-approved tests. Everybody consented in the company to use just a homebrew test, and we knew it was very, very good. But so that's kind of how this started. And Judy was extremely experimental to in order to apply it in the right way so that people felt very safe.
Was that just the PCR test, or were you doing serology as well at that point?
At that point, there's no need to do serology, so, if everybody well, I don't know if everybody knows, but serology is there in order to actually find antibodies which are produced by the body of a previous infection. And the PCR test is something where the virus replicates in the mucosal membranes, throat, lung, and so on. And with the PCR test, you can find actually the viral particle and the genome of those, the RNA genome of those viruses. So at that time, very, very early on, nobody had immunity. This whole world did not have any immunity. That's why it's so that's why it's so dangerous.
And that's the throat swab, as Amanda's chatting with us there. That's the one in the back of the throat. It was through the nose at first, but you have it. It's more easily accepted now. You can do it in the back of the throat, right? And then as it became aware, people became aware that asymptomatic spreading was a very bad, big deal. Then the antibody test became very important. And for companies that are opening up or anybody else, it's very helpful to know both. Is that how it goes?
Do you want to?
Yeah, it is. I mean, most people want to have the serology test, the blood test, because everyone's so hopeful that they've already had it and they're protected and they can go on with their life. But the reality is, it's less than 5% of the people who actually really had it. And so you really need the PCR test to see if you have an infection and how it's going to spread and affect your community. So yes, we've been using just the throat swab and to protect ourselves, to test for the infection. We had a couple of people who actually in mobile express clinics, we've had a lot of blood tests done. And so far have not found anyone who has had the infection.
Really?
We did have someone through a throat swab who did have COVID-19, not in our own company, but out of the work that we're doing with Mobile Express, we did find one who tested positive for COVID-19. And so, it is really out there, and it's sometimes hard to see it in the bubble that we live in because a lot of us don't see anyone who has it, but we actually have, in the short time that Mobile Express has been going, we have found people who have tested positive with the throat swab PCR test.
So
how many people, sorry, Abel, go ahead.
No, so just to clarify for the Facebook viewers too, so the PCR test, the nose or the throat test is basically, do I have it or not? And the serology test is for if I've recovered and I've got now antibodies against the virus. But does that necessarily tell us that the antibodies confer immunity to the host now?
It's not known yet. So it's still a question to be answered. Nobody who tests positive for serology should be sure that they cannot get it again. So, and this is kind of an interesting virus. Perhaps, a lot of people know the influenza virus. Every year you basically need a new vaccine in order to, and it's sometimes hit and miss. And it's probably something like similar. It's also an RNA virus. It's highly mutagen, it mutates really rapidly, so it changes. So, and I think we don't know enough about, and we don't know how fast mutation actually gets around an immune response. So I think you would be, I think we still have to be very careful, even if you're seropositive.
So we still recommend the normal guide, the social distancing and the mask, even if you have recovered from COVID-19. Then is that an accurate statement?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Just trying to dispel a lot of the myths and things that are out there, right? There's a lot of.
I would still be very careful.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Good. Good.
I think there's a myth in the media that like it's like just you take it and whether you have some kind of you're about to have a heart attack or something. Oh, I took the test and I'm fine, or my prostate's not growing, or whatever. But that's not it. I mean, it could cycle through really just a little bit past the quarantine period again and again and again. So if you're kind of a high dollar company, things are happening, or not a high dollar company, if you're in a nursing home and you need constant regular testing. Isn't that part of the new concept? Whereas the media is like, oh, you got it once, you're fine, or you're not.
Well, it's kind of difficult because we entered a totally new world. We never experienced something like it before. So the concept of before, it was always, okay, we have a healthcare system. It's a sick care system, because you get sick, you get tested, and you get treatment. So all of a sudden we are in a different universe of, well, you don't have to be sick in order to transmit the virus. So you can spread really rapidly, and it's deadly in addition. You see in these, homes, where you see all of a sudden, one person gets infected and then 30 or 40 people are infected. So this is a total different world, and our system is not really prepared to handle it. Our insurance system is not set up, and we see it all the time, because currently, if you get reimbursed if you are symptomatic. If you're not symptomatic, well, I don't think you get it reimbursed. Perhaps there are a couple of insurances which are now, getting up to speed, but currently, you have to show symptoms and you get the $100 reimbursement for the test. And these are very expensive tests.
To the physician as well as to the person, but even the physician is not reimbursed. So that means the companies would have to pay that physician on the side, right? Or in addition.
Well, yeah, I think it's a complicated system, because someone who's sick, they goes to an emergency room. There's a whole overhead of an emergency room and the test. So and that's a whole different problem, which we as a society, I think we have to tackle. What is it worth, and to set up a system that actually is suitable for a pandemic environment?
You're saying that, there's a financial disincentive to test asymptomatic patients, and then there's also a limit to the number of rooms or beds that we have available for symptomatic patients, right?
Yeah, it's, in the beginning, it was all about, do we have enough tests? And I think, yes, we have enough tests, but how do we use them so that we actually can live under a new paradigm of a pandemic situation? And that's something. It is, I think, as a society, there are very different ways how people look at it. And, some people say, okay, let's just, everybody gets sick and we just take the 5% loss, 5% loss of 330 million, 15 million, right? So are we ready to accept 15 million dead people in the US? So I think it's a very different situation.
And that's tenfold less than the Thanos guy in the Avengers movie, right? That wanted to do 50%, right? So I guess maybe that's what they're looking at. I don't know what the reasoning is, but I want to come back to the mobile clinic though. So you're saying you provide kind of a full service, both PCR and serology. Is that your own test, or off the shelf, or?
Off the shelf. So at Mobile Xpress, we have decided to be sort of the middle person in the whole, so getting tested and getting the results. So we go in, we have agreements with many clinical labs, and those are clinical labs that have been certified. They're called CLIA or CAP-CLIA certified labs, and they have tests that are either FDA approved or approved for experimental use applications that have been accepted. So we're using all tests that the FDA has said, go ahead and use them. And they are not what we've developed. We are focused on cancer diagnostics and keeping ourselves safe. And so we have these agreements, and we go out with nurses, phlebotomists, we have a doctor on staff, go into companies, test them with whatever test they want. Today we drew from close to 60 people for serology tests. And some days we go into companies that do both, or for companies that just want the PCR test, we'll go in and swab. We've swabbed 50 to 100 at a time.
Wow. So,
so we do that. We swab, we draw the blood, and we deliver it or ship it to the lab. And the results are all available in a HIPAA compliant online software program. So everything is done under HIPAA regulations. And so there's no confidentiality breach. The only thing is that usually these companies, it's usually a company that is trying to get back to work safely. They're paying for the tests at the moment, although we have heard that United Healthcare will pay for the tests as well. So we're excited about that. But these companies are paying themselves so that they can get back to work safely. So all of the employees have signed off on letting their employer know the results of their tests. And so, for example, today we drew close to 60 blood tubes from at a company. We went in, set up in their office, and drew those, and they're already at the clinical laboratory being tested for COVID-19. And so normally so far, the results have come back to the employees or the employer within 24 hours for both tests.
Wow, that's super fast. So I'm familiar with the CLIA certification and compliance in a physical lab, in a building and whatnot. And I know it's extremely stringent. A lot of protocols need to be followed. How is that? Is that extended out to a mobile service, or what does the mobile service have to do to be that middleman?
So we have to be, we have to show that the laboratory that is processing the sample is clinically certified, so CAP-CLIA certified. We also need to show that the test has FDA approval or the experimental use application in. So between those two things, that is all that we really need to do. We're sort of like the acting nurse, the RN, and the doctor. So we have a doctor's approval on all of this. So we use in telemedicine for the approvals. And all of the staff that goes in and collects the sample are either phlebotomists or people who can swab, all supervised either by a doctor or an RN. And that is what we're required to do as a mobile testing service. So we fall under their license, not specifically called out, but we're allowed to use their clinical services and tests.
Perfect segue into the visuals here, huh?
Well, do you actually see what I see?
Yeah, I see it.
Yes, we see it.
I think that'll help our audience, understand this process.
Well, just to let you know, so for us, we really select, so we're all scientists who started this whole process. We know exactly what tests are coming out, which ones have EUA, Emergency Use Authority approvals, and how good they are. So for us, it's really, how can we select the best test? And they're rapidly improving. Cost goes down, throughput is better. So the whole world is developing tests that are getting better and better. So we see the bottleneck not at the test generation. It is, how do you apply the tests so that you have the highest impact on the healthcare system, on getting back to work, on people feeling safe when they go to work. And I think that is for us, when we discussed in the beginning, how can we use our system and apply it to many different people. So we really thought the bottleneck will be the logistic. Nobody ever tried, people know how to do set on a marathon for 20,000 people, but they don't know how to swab 20,000 people. So for us, it was like, and being compliant with all the regulations, with HIPAA, with sample logistics, with transport, without degradation of the virus. So it's the viral genome. So it's a kind of it's actually a pretty big deal to set it all up and still be compliant.
In fact, aren't there a lot of things that sort of sound good, but there's an error rate that is a little scary? Can you talk about, you say you picked the best test, and that's, you're a virologist, and Judy is also PhD, both from the Pasteur and you from the SQUAWK postdoc. But things go wrong, or they're not, and some tests aren't as good as they are. Can you speak to that?
Oh yeah, sure. It's so if people want to know, so we went through most of the tests, especially in the beginning when we were choosing which tests should we take and who shall we collaborate with and who should be our suppliers. We went through all the applications. They have to publish it. If they get the EUA approval, they have to tell within the application how sensitive the test is and what the specificity is. And there is a wide variety of, what are the targets within the viral genome. Some tests only have one target, some tests have 3 targets, some have a specificity which is actually pretty low. Some need 6,000 virus particles in order to determine something. If someone is infected, some people only need 1 to 5 viral particles per ml.
Well, that's
so
huge.
There is it's huge.
Huge
the difference. So, but normally people who apply the tests, I think even a lot of medical doctors who prescribe the tests, I don't think they go through the effort and do it. They take their normal, someone comes to their clinic and they take the normal routes of the healthcare or sick care system. They take the tests, which they always do. I don't think they choose who has the best test. They choose who they always use.
Abel, I can't hear you.
Abel,
okay, there we go.
Yes,
there we
no.
go. Sorry, I have a couple of questions here. One from the audience. Can you talk about the cost if somebody calls you up and says, "Hey, I want one or both of these tests"? What's the ballpark that they're looking at for something?
Judy, do you wanna take that one?
You would give me the hardest question.
No. You always. She's so good with these kind of things. I know. So I refer to Judy.
You're kind of a chicken there. So that's a really hard question because everyone expects the test will be free or $5 or something like that, and it really does take a clinical lab with an approved test to run it and the correct staff to actually go out and test. So we don't test it with just anyone. We have RNs, doctors, and medical assistants. So for both tests, we started out with an asking price of about $179, but that cost is going down as we've aligned ourselves with some local labs. It's dropping and dropping and dropping. So we're not quite at $100 a test yet, but we're looking at getting closer and closer to it. And if we get enough people at one sitting, then of course we have a sliding scale for pricing. And we try to go into companies that have at least 10 to 20 people and on up. So as I mentioned, we were in a company today where we tested close to 60 people. We could test hundreds, quite honestly. It just takes a little bit bigger staff, but there are plenty of very, very qualified people to go out and do the testing. And the kits are available. We have enough kits. Certainly blood collection tubes are, they've been around forever, and so they're easy to come by. I think a lot of people are concerned that there aren't enough swabs or the solution to keep the swabs or the virus in the right state to do testing, but those are also much more available now. We're happy to get larger volume to help with bringing the costs down, quite honestly.
So 179, and that's for either test, or is there a different price for the?
It's for either test. That's our starting price, but we've been able to price better than that. as we get more people, as we get further down the road, but also if someone has a larger company, of course, we can.
So just to put
tests, but that's either or, yeah.
Either or,
yeah. So just to put this a little bit in perspective, if you go to Quest and you want to have this test, and you have to go there, you have to park, you have to go in, and they charge $120 for the test. If you are symptomatic, it's free. The insurance pays for it, but the insurance still pays the $120 with their deductions.
Right.
So it is, and the reimbursement code, in the beginning of the epidemic, it was $50 reimbursement by the insurance per test, and now it's 100. I think 105 is the reimbursement code, because what it actually takes, this is a PCR-based assay. So that means you have to collect the sample, you have to transport it to the laboratory, you have to extract the RNA using very specific protocols and very expensive machineries. Afterwards, you have to put enzymes in, you have to amplify. So there are 5 different things which you have to put in that reaction, and you have to run the test and get the results back. So it's not that they are free, it's only how is the reimbursement structured currently. And reimbursement for free is you have to show symptoms. If we go into a company, that's a total different story.
Well, this is like a bar tab at Bella Vista, so it's not too bad. I'd sign up for that. But for those that don't know, like DNA is much more forgiving and easier to work with, and RNA is extremely sensitive to degradation and must be handled with a different set of protocols. So I totally understand that, and just wanted to make that distinction for people that don't understand the difference between DNA and RNA online. It's a totally different beast.
And I think the average person, I mean, both sound kind of like out there on a spaceship or something. DNA, RNA, ribonucleic acid. What is this transfer RNA? I mean, it is pretty strange, right? I mean, we weren't able to do this back in SOX day. Are these run on Illumina tests? I mean, you said expensive machines. Are they available in offices, or are they much more over in places like Illumina or 10x Bio?
Well,
it's qPCR. It's qPCR. It's a different machine. It's not so expensive. The whole test is not. It's not like running a full sequence, quite honestly.
Okay.
It's and the fact that we got a test up and running at the beginning of all of this in our own lab. It was a machine we had in the lab. We didn't buy the machine for this purpose. We used the machine every day for other purposes.
Okay, and as a note of levity, our Amanda Cornelia, our executive producer, said, well, are there going to be like testing parties, like Botox parties, do you think?
COVID parties.
There are Botox parties?
COVID?
Yeah, people have Botox parties? I think I want to participate.
Yeah,
Beverly
actually.
Hills COVID.
Hey, Jude, that's the next company, huh?
No, I mean, I think that there are those parties, and we're very good at party planning, and we'd be happy to facilitate one.
It's actually a good idea, isn't it?
I heard Abel just say that the pricing sounds reasonable. He's up. So Abel, let's have a party.
There we go.
So actually, we did this for ourselves. So just to show you who, let me see if I can
get Botox.
Well, you could go to a bar. I mean, it'd be almost a promotional thing for, what was the bar we went into in Barrio Logan, with the pool tables and stuff? You could do the testing.
So
Attitude Brewing.
I can,
yeah.
Do I share?
Yeah.
No, here. Okay. Do I share now? Okay. So that's kind of just the team, and just to tell you something about a party. So all of those people, they are very, very experienced. Most of them have companies. We ran these tests across all their companies, all their employees. And we came together in order to build this team. And each one of them has, probably 20 years of experience. They're all co-entrepreneurs and people we know from throughout of our life when we said, hey, there's something, it is not used correctly. We are in the middle of a pandemic. How can we help? How can we do it? And nobody got paid. We all got together and we put this whole system together just using Zoom meetings. And actually just a couple of days ago, we all got tested, and then we came all together in our house for the first time. And we're sitting, Steve knows our house. It was always a party house. We always had friends over, and that's kind of gone. And it felt great. So all of those people came and where we built something really meaningful for Mobile Express clinics. We never really met in person. We know them from before the pandemic, but then we didn't touch each other. So then we all got tested. And after the test results came back, we just said, okay, let's all get together. And we had actually a really good party. They're not really big drinkers, but it was really nice to actually shake someone's hand again. No,
we didn't shake hands.
Close. I did, and you reprimanded me.
Well, there's some funny things here. I mean, that's the way to do a wedding, right?
Oh yeah, so I think this is you have to plan a little bit ahead, but then after your test comes negative, at that point you're good. You're good to go. You are not infectious.
Test positive that day.
That would be
unfortunate. Test positive that day of the wedding. Sorry.
Yeah.
So then, as far as
very unlikely.
How many of these mobile clinics do you have? Is it the one, or is it something that you're planning to scale up?
Yeah, currently it's one. We occupied one van, and we are actually optimizing towards larger scales. So currently we are down with registration and swabbing down to 3 minutes, one person. So that really means if we can go different teams. So far, 60 employees was the maximum at a given time. So now I think we can go up to probably, Judy, what is your estimate? I would like to go up to 5,000 a day, but Jude, what do you think?
I think we could get up to a couple hundred a day from where we are right now, comfortably. I mean, honestly, there are a lot of great medical people out there who are really happy to have work and to be part of a solution. So finding phlebotomists and nurses is definitely in the cards, not only in San Diego, but Orange County, LA County, and beyond.
So 5,000 is a lot. That would, yeah. That's a lot more than are getting tested in San Diego in general, just with these kind of one-off tests. I mean, that would really change it. This would be like San Diego could become like that little Italian town in a way, where you have a community that is safer. That's a very big selling point if you were the mayor. Of course, it would cost.
Well, it's. I think it is currently it is. People are struggling with how do you actually move through the system. Nobody really knows it. This is new territory, and I think it is really most of the people are stuck in that sick care system. So, but if you are testing, seeing it as a community, to test a community who interacts a lot with each other. And in this, it's kind of the approach. It's a different point how you can actually stick with these communities in the company level. That's what we are focusing currently, because we would like to help getting, San Diego back to work and helping companies to and their employees to feel safe. But you can expand that concept to stores, hospitals, church, gym, schools, neighborhood, homeless shelters, restaurant. So if you are going into an approach where you have enough tests and you target them in the right way, I think you can really make a difference how a whole town, even like San Diego, might keep itself safe.
Yeah, it's funny because like you said it here too, and Dr. Chanda, who was on from Sanford Burnham, had said, yeah, all pandemics are local, right? And so we have to kind of, work these things out ourselves and figure it out. Now, what is it? What do you need to scale this up? Then are you looking for investors, volunteers? Are you going to franchise this out?
Looking for customers. We're looking for more customers. The word isn't out really about us. We haven't put a lot of effort into sales and marketing, as we've been just making sure that our systems are in place. But we are looking, that is really what we're looking for, is customers.
Interesting.
So that party that you want to have, we'll plan it for you.
Right.
It was on ABC TV locally, just Thursday and Friday, so.
Yeah, and I suspect with the reopening and the slight uptick of cases, it's probably going to continue, right?
Fortunately, yeah.
Yeah.
And the issue here too is not everybody's treating this as a pandemic anymore. It's almost like they lifted some of the restrictions, and it's like, oh, we're back to normal. Just just as I was walking through the Home Depot yesterday, and had some things I needed to buy, quick in, quick out, and someone was walking past me. She was gonna sneeze. She took off her mask to sneeze and then put the mask back on, and it was like,
oh no,
that just defeats the whole purpose, doesn't it? But you walk on, and I'm gonna wait to see 14 days if I'm okay.
Well, did you go and find some hand sanitizer or go wash?
Definitely, yeah, definitely went to cleanse, sanitize, yes, for sure. But yeah, a lot of that going around.
Yeah, so it is, I think what we need is really that, so I'm also on the roadmap to recovery of city council member. So I think it has to be a kind of more a concerted effort towards using it. For us, we can scale this. We can have 10, we can have 20 vans running around in the city. We have enough testing capabilities aligned with us to really make this happen, up to 5,000 tests currently. And I'm sure we can even scale it up. Now it's, how do we use it? How do we apply it? How do we get the buy-in of the mayor or of the political arena? So how can we, they don't see it as, it's not dangerous, or it doesn't happen here. So it's more like, how do you create the awareness that we are in a new paradigm and we have to deal with it? Otherwise, it will deal with us. And nobody is immune currently, or couple, 5% perhaps. So there are plenty of people to get infected and plenty of people who can die. And if we minimize that or say, oh, this is fear mongering or these kind of things, no, it is real. And I think we have to be sure that it's, we better find a solution now. And I think we have developed a path towards pandemic management. It is much more than a test.
Pandemic management. Yeah, I think that is the watchword, the phrase there. And I noticed a tweet from somebody at SQUAWK, an epidemiologist, and there was a call with many epidemiologists on there. And somebody asked a simple question about bars and gymnasiums, and the answer unanimously was they weren't going to go back to either, even if they were open. And somebody said Disneyland was open, and the whole group laughed. It sounds a little black humor, but this kind of people who sort of know the models and people that know the science like you are quite a bit more cautious and worried about the future of America. Is that right?
Well, I think you're right.
It's funny, just this morning, right? It looked like they're permanently closing 4 24-hour fitnesses. I mean, I can't imagine how difficult it would be to clean one of those things. They're just monster gyms, right? On the flip side, I've been beta testing the protocols at the local gym that I go to. It's a boutique gym, but the level of cleanliness and spraying, and it's like, wow. So I trust that gym more than my grocery store or anywhere else because of the level of protocols and stringency that they have, right? But again, smaller boutique gyms versus a 24-hour fitness that's just wide open.
But there, it's kind of, if you start understanding the virus cycle, it's also kind of pretty interesting, because if someone gets infected before he starts spreading the virus, they're kind of a couple of days difference, but it starts kind of after 5 to 7 days. And so you have a window, to reduce the risk. There are quite a few algorithms which are going around. If you're testing every 2 weeks, your risk of contamination is way, way down. In a low pandemic area like here, if you test every 2 weeks to 3 to 4 weeks, it is going into the single digits. I would be very worried to trust it. But if you're in a high pandemic region, probably if you test every week, you can really catch everyone. Here, so for example, for a gym, we thought through it quite a bit. So if all the gym members getting tested within 1 day, perhaps 1 day before they open the gym, then they only let people in, and you have a little counter which says, okay, you are within 2 weeks, you have 2 weeks, and then you get tested again. That would be kind of, that is part of your gym membership. So I think you would feel probably safer than if they just wipe down the instruments.
Right. We're approaching the hour. I know this is what I love about the conversations, because once they become conversations, we can go on forever, right? So I'm trying to respect your time here too. Steve, did we leave anything unturned here?
No, except I think we dropped a little bit on the amount of errors in some of the tests.
Yes.
People go in and they think it's all the same, like it's a simple, like, do I have A, B, or O or whatever? But in fact, people like Rolf and Judy and others realize not all tests are created equal, put it that way. Even if they're approved. So you talked about the amount of molecules of virus that can be there, the difference between 6,000 and just a few. Sort of reminds us of BioFluidica, where you can catch a very few circulating cells. But should people, maybe without saying names or maybe with, is that of concern? Should people see, you're charging, but it's a high dollar test. You're giving people that know what they're doing a certain sort of surety that many people don't realize that there is a variance in the results, which I find a little scary, actually.
Jude, you wanna comment on this one? Because
actually, I think you have a really good table that our scientists have put together on looking at the limit of detection of the tests that are out there. And I have to commend all the labs that have really put their efforts in very quickly. There are big labs, there are small labs, some that got their tests out early, which was really commendable, but the limit of detection is a very high number of viral particles in the thousands, whereas some of the more recent tests and the tests that we chose to use are the number of viral particles that they can find are much lower. And so we're using some of the tests where the viral particles are actually.
So do you see this table? So these are these are kind of, we went through all the EUAs and what they say, what they can do, how the sensitivity is. So, and you have to see everybody. Do you see the screen?
Yeah,
yes.
Sure.
I don't know. It's, this is public information, so I don't do anything bad to it. This is just what it is. It's not bashing one or the other. This is kind of
a wide range. Yeah.
This is just the different tests, and so they came out really early. So that's 3 regions, and so Thermo Fisher's 10 copy per reaction. You have to also be careful when you read it. These were per milliliter, and these were per reaction, and the COBUS doesn't tell you anything. So it's just you have to be very careful on how you interpret that data. It's highly complex. You have to look at what kind of region of the genome are being amplified. What are they looking for? And that's just kind of showing a little bit that we do our homework before we actually engage with companies who are offering a certain test.
And Steve, to your point earlier, the difference between, I know some people think it's a sequencing-based readout, but it's actually taking this genomic material, whether it's RNA or DNA, and amplifying it up to an amount that some device can detect it. So it's kind of a, yes, it's there or not, but it's got to be amplified or grown, right, through this cycle, this technique called PCR, or polymerase chain reaction. So it's not. You're not actually sequencing out the genetic material in those organisms. So yeah, that's interesting. That's an interesting table. Didn't realize how far or how wide the range was there.
Interesting, huh?
Yeah. And so that's another thing that again, I know we're getting into this conversation, but there's some people that have heard horror stories about a doctor or a nurse having sex with their nose, right? And it's uncomfortable, basically. And so some people that have these symptoms just say, I don't want that. And so they don't go in. What's the likelihood that a saliva test is in the works? And again, this goes back to polysensitivity.
Well, there's, if you just see since January to now, you go into PubMed and there 19,000 new publications came out with the search term COVID-19. So it's kind of difficult to differentiate, and go through that literature. But what I saw, and I'm working with quite a few scientists in order to kind of keep on track and keep updated. So the summary consensus, it seems that nasal swabs and throat swabs, if you are taken close to the tonsil, is similar. So yes. So it's not, but I'm if someone says, what do you want? And do you want to go up with this long thing in your nose, or do you want to have your tonsil swab? I would say, well, tonsil, it's actually not so bad.
Yeah.
The saliva, there's still different. It's very diverse. I haven't seen a consensus yet. Saliva would be great, but you just don't get early detection because your cell count in the saliva is so much lower, or you have to really cough it up, but you have to direct people on how to do it. So this is not. That's why self-swabbing is one thing. We had one of the Navy SEALs. Oh, he was great in self-swabbing. And wow, and I said, wow, and I said, yeah, we are trained. We can do these things.
The deliberate discomfort book right there.
But then other people, if you let them self-swab, they touch basically their tongue.
Yeah.
And
I would be skeptical of letting somebody do a self-test like that. Like I recently did the 23andMe, and the first one failed, and I spit as much as I could in that tube, and it still came back like, oh, you need to have a new test, and so they mailed me another one. But even that one, right? So
Joe, do you remember we did in the beginning? We said, well, let's see if we can collect saliva, and what was the time it took compared to swabbing? It was like a massive amount of time.
Swabbing's a couple of seconds to a minute or so, And it really depends. I mean, Rolf and I developed a saliva collection device and reagent in our last company. And we saw in testing that, age, there's sometimes an age dependent on how long it takes to collect, because as you age, you don't always make as much saliva. That's sort of known. And so the older you get, it takes a little bit longer to spit into a tube. So it took, it could take 10, 15 minutes to do it. It's actually more, it's faster to just do a blood draw or a swab, quite honestly. But, I have to say, saliva collection is one of those opportunities for self-collection, which really may be sometime where this, in a pandemic like this, where it will go, that there will be self-collection. They'll probably still need to have doctors certify that the test was needed or approved or understood. But there are some of those self-collection devices I know in the works. We actually helped to beta test one for one of the companies.
I know we have to go, but Judy, weren't you one of the founders or on the board of Athena, the
Yes.
biotech for women, which has become a very large thing, from CEOs to postdocs in San Diego? So very helpful. And then maybe you should share your story of how BioFluidica got started very quickly. That's talks about some solutions.
Sure. So yes, I was a board member for many years at Athena. I was also just a member. I'm still a member at Athena, a very prestigious and well-regarded women's group in San Diego and beyond. So we've done a lot of great programs there. And then Steve was just asking about BioFluidica, and BioFluidica came about because I'm very unfortunately, over 5 years ago, I developed breast cancer. I was CEO of another company, Biomatrica, where Rolf and I founded, and we were the inventors on that technology I was the CEO for 11 years there. But unfortunately, I had the misfortune to develop breast cancer. And so as two scientists would, we delved very deep into molecular diagnostics, in particular for my situation, to figure out what to do for my cancer. What was I going to do? What kind of testing did I need? Who did I need to talk to? And we became experts at molecular diagnostics, at least understanding it. And so after my breast cancer and we took some time off, we actually called a friend of ours who was the founder of BioFluidica, and he asked us to take the company to the next level. He's an academic, and he's a very, very good scientist in microfluidics, but commercialization wasn't his big goal or strength. So with our background back then at least, in understanding the molecular aspects of cancer and being experts in commercialization of diagnostic testing and diagnostic reagents, we decided to throw our hats in to develop BioFluidica, and we're in the process of commercialization. We expect to have our product on the market by the end of this year, actually.
That's always, yeah, go ahead, Steve.
Oh, I was going to say that's an NIH often funded thing, more than 15. Yeah. And it's a robust company. But anyway, Abel.
Well, I definitely like that story because I am also a cancer survivor, and it was definitely caught by luck. Biomarker that just showed up 1 year and had no symptoms, no anything, and then all of a sudden you're in surgery and radiation. But for another day.
How many years ago was it for you?
7 now, 7+.
Wow! Yeah. Congratulations.
Thank you.
This is definitely something. I think if it hits you, you have to somehow deal with it, and it's different. I'm working on genomic analysis for 20 years, and when Judy all of a sudden got diagnosed, all of a sudden everything changed. It was not the same than just looking at some nucleic acid sequences. It was someone's life, and it's someone's life of
literally
very different.
By chance, I'm religious about going to the doctors every year. And 1 year, my doctor said, "Hey, we just haven't done all of these panels. Let's just go ahead and mark them all off." I'm like, "Yeah, sure, why not?" And sure enough, one of the tests comes back positive for a biomarker. He's like, "Probably nothing. Let's go in and ultrasound different areas, and boom, there it is. But I had 0 symptoms, didn't know. Just, yeah, it had been for him to just buck wild, go crazy. Maybe a quota, I don't know, he had to satisfy, but you know, thing is, caught it early, and yeah, 7+ years, but.
Very.
Look at that, look at Rolf.
I haven't taken it off for a long time.
Very cool, very cool. Well, again, unless, do you have any other things, Steve, or anything else you guys want to
No, it's great. Great.
I was just gonna jump on.
Go ahead.
The lurker is back.
I'm back. Just a quick thank you, and Abel, thank you for sharing. You know, I think whenever we open up as hosts, and that's part of the virtual social club, it's about connecting and just being transparent and being real. And one of the beauties of having Bella Vista was that people somehow, you know, you just, once you stepped into that space, egos were gone, and you were real, and you were sincere, and you were genuine, and that's how collaboration works. I loved your story of how your team came together, right? And they came together via Zoom, and it was all collaboration and volunteer, and you hadn't met each other. There's so many of us here on Bella V TV that have not met each other in person as well.
Well,
So
you should all get swabbed, and you can meet in person.
I got a big nose, so I'm.
That makes it easier. Yeah, a little nose like mine. It's just kind of hard.
But just truly, thank you. And what really I mean, there's so many things I want to, you know, just keep it short. But the idea of pandemic management. And, you know, you're saying we're always working together to put what we call our Miracle Coast in San Diego in the forefront as pioneers in so many different areas, whether it's cross-border relations, whether it's, you know, data, communications, biotechnology. Like, San Diego is truly, truly a great region. And I think there is a huge opportunity for collaboration. As you guys are sitting there talking about how do you scale up, I mean, maybe I'm totally off, but I'm just like, okay, well, I own a restaurant, and I've got a catering van that's been sitting for 3 months doing nothing. You know what I mean? So like, this is where sometimes, you know, you bring people together from different areas. And then this is where I
Amanda, do you want to franchise the restaurant business? I give it to you.
To COVID testing.
For COVID testing.
Well, it's right in front of
specialize because we have so much work to do with the kind of the biotech industry. I think if we do this for restaurants, I think people would feel much safer.
Absolutely. I think people want, you know, I'm very reluctant to open for many reasons, and people need to feel safe. Yes, we have an outdoor terrace, but there, you know, you have to make sure that your staff is safe. You have to make sure your customers are safe. And, you know, luckily we do have a clientele that are very, they're very well educated and obviously believe in scientists, because 80% of them are scientists, right? But it's a huge responsibility. Reopening is.
You could have a COVID testing party on the plaza. Now there's an idea. Sponsored, paid for by Thermo Fisher, perhaps, you know, or by Denny Stanford, maybe.
The parking lot, you can have like drive up, test, grab a margarita. I don't know.
Then you'd come back the next day, yeah. Unless you tested negative, then maybe you get 2 margaritas then.
Well, that's interesting. I think we should think more about that. I'm also a volunteer for a crowd fight COVID-19 here in San Diego. So there's a global consortium of scientists that are creating databases of all the available testing sites around the world, and we're trying to, you know, validate and centralize these databases. And so I'm one of 5, I think, now here in San Diego that are trying to assemble that database here. So, but access to a lot of other scientists that have volunteered for this effort. So so think about that.
I think it's, you know, I think it's a work in progress. I think we started it. I think the more we know about the virus, the more we learn over the next couple of months and probably years, I think we will refine our approach and keep the flexibility to take the best test, the cheapest test. How do we finance it? How does the insurance system react to it? How is actually the unified voice of the mayors of the states? So it is not so much that there's not a solution. It is more, how do we get the message across that if we behave like a pandemic management system, what do we need to do in order to approach it? And I think for us, it was, kind of 20 people got together with extreme experience from logistic, scientists, virologists, biological safety. So we all had all these different roles based on our experience. And we came up with mobile express clinics. And that was, but it doesn't mean that that is the only answer. I think it's really how do we go from here towards really controlling a pandemic environment. And I don't think it goes away, but it will change and our techniques will be better, our approaches will be better. And I think it's just adapting to a new world.
We're on to something.
Not to scare anybody, right? But we still haven't gone through a full flu season either, right? So.
Right.
Well, that will come in addition, yeah.
Yeah. So.
How do you differentiate between the flu and COVID-19?
I guess we'll find out shortly, huh? Once we get through that.
Yep.
Again, Amanda, any last things then?
Oh, my brain's like,
I know.
ideas, Miracle Coast Collective, how we can pull it all together.
Squirrels everywhere.
So it is what I really hope is that, these kind of events like being on this radio show will make a difference, that we come across that we're very sincere to make a difference. There are approaches out, we take the best ones and move forward. And there's actually, let me see, I have a website. You basically don't find it yet, or at least not easily. So, but if you type in, and I share this with you. So if you type in, here we go. You see it?
Yeah.
And so if you go there, it's highly sophisticated. You can sign up for us to get the van ready. You inscribe, you tell the people's name, everything is fully automated. It is really a very simple way of a company without putting any brain power in or time commitment to get ready to be tested and create a safe work environment. So go to that website and ask more information. You can just sign up, give me more information. I'm a company in this segment, and you just move through and we get back to you, and we'll try to find the solution that works for you.
Excellent.
All right. Well, with that, thank you for the website. I think we'll go ahead and link this into the comments too, when we post to YouTube and Facebook, and help disseminate that. But yeah, with that, thank you for your time, Judy, Rolf. It's been a pleasure. Very informational, and I'm very excited to see what comes out of this going forward. So, and I hope we see you guys soon.
Pandemic.
Okay.
All right.
Abel, can you tell us who's coming on next week for your segment?
Let's see. Let me think who I have here. Oh, yes. For next week's episode, for those that are interested, and for my fraternity that's hanging out there watching, that they're still on, one of our engineering friends from back at UCSD, who, science is not just about the biology and the life sciences, but a very good engineering friend of mine who's gone through the kind of engineering workflow through Google, Apple, Amazon, and is now the chief technology officer for a vitamin and supplements company called Care of. And they are reshaping the way people take their vitamins, and actually how they determine what vitamins they need in a personalized and 30-day kind of individualized packet service that can be customized. So he's going to tell us about his career, how he got there, how you don't have to stick to the engineering track, you can jump into the life sciences, and then how this new company and this new concept is revolutionizing how vitamins are being taken. So, and his name is Sandeep Choksi. So hopefully we'll get to see him next week.
Awesome. And then also tomorrow, of course, I got to get a little plug. Azim Kamisa is going to be the guest, and he runs the Azim Kamisa Foundation. He'll be on Interiors with our host, Alexis Dixon. And for those of you that don't know the story about Azim, his son was shot by a gang member some 25 years ago. And so Azim made the very heroic decision to forgive the young boy who shot his son. And so with the grandfather, they started a foundation, and he teaches about peace and forgiveness.
I
So
do
they'll
know.
be on tomorrow.
I do know that story.
Yeah, so they'll be on tomorrow, and then we have some other great segments coming. We're going to also continue covering a lot of COVID and a lot of what's going on with civil unrest, and giving the platform to Black Lives Matter so that we can, continue to educate and spread some love. So thank you all so much, and we'll see you soon. It sounds like we're going to have a testing party.
Yeah.
Well, let's do it. You know how to reach us. Perhaps that restaurant thing would be an interesting experience.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. All right.
We'll be talking. Thank you guys so much. All right, have a good evening, and we all got to figure out what to cook for dinner.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Aloha.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you all.
Aloha.
Aloha.